However, we want to look at these 5,000 just between these two, because these are just two of 30 official Qur'ans, which have 93,000 differences between them. We don't have time to do that. But if the Muslims say that there's no difference in doctrine, no difference in practice, no difference in belief, then I want them to just talk about these two. Let's just talk about these two, since these are the most popular in the world today. This one, which is the Hafs, is used almost all over the world since 1924. It was canonized. Well, that was just for Cairo. By 1936, it was canonized for Egypt. By 1985, it was canonized for the whole world by King Fahd. So this has become the canonical text. However, in North Africa, if you're in North Africa, you got to use this one because there's 5,000 differences. You want to memorize.
Now, here is why we call the two Qurans. Because if I want to follow the Islamic, basically, narrative, this Quran that right here, the 1924 Hafs Quran, the most popular standardized Quran, is supposedly the preserved Quran that existed in heaven in a preserved tablets. But wait, we have another one called Warsh. Oh, a Muslim will say, no. They're both are one and the same. One and the same? Well, I speak Arabic and I have to tell you they sound different sometimes. And not only that, but there is some theological damage that comes out of these variants, these differences. We will unpack them one verse at a time and let you be the judge. If they sound the same, they read the same, or they mean the same. And you can decide for yourself if we're talking about one Quran, preserved up in heaven, or different Qurans, not to mention, of course, which one of them was revealed in the first place to the Prophet of Islam. And if they were all revealed, that's a whole different story.
Mecca, Medina, that is the Qurayshi Quran, because that's the dialect, right? The Qurayshi dialect. Do you know where this was written? This is the one that is the Hafs. Do you know the city it was written in? It was written by Hafs in 796 in Kufa.
Yeah.
Is Kufa in Iraq or is Kufa in Arabia?
I always ask this question, how come it wasn't the reading of Ibn Kathir from Mecca?
Exactly. Or Nafi from Mecca. Why didn't they use one of the three major 10 ones that actually, when you look at all of them, you can see that this one was written hundreds of miles away and hundreds of years later, 144 years to be exact. Where is this one from? Warsh. Do you know where this is from? This is actually from
Egypt.
Cairo.
Yep.
And it's the only one from Cairo. It was chosen because it is the only one from Cairo.
Well, how come the 1924 Cairo edition did not rely on Warsh from Cairo?
Bingo. Why did they not go to this one? Why did Ibn Saud family there in 1985 use one of those readings that is from Mecca or Medina? And why in the world did they go to this one? The reason why is because this is the one that was chosen by the Ottomans after 1299.
Becoming more and more popular.
It was the most popular one from the 13th, 14th, and 15th, and that's why it was chosen by Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad in 1924 at Al-Azhar University, and that's why it is now the standard. And let's go back. And here's the question. Let's see what Nasser shows us. And when you go back to Nasser, I'm going to show you a number of graphs here, because when you look at these graphs, this is something that comes from his own research. Let's look at the first one, and let's look at Ibn Kathir. So here's Ibn Kathir. He is from Mecca. He died in 738. Ibn Mujahid died in 936. So you're talking almost exactly, we're talking almost exactly 200 years later.
And this came from Dr. Nasser's book,
Nasser's
by the way.
book. This is from his, these are his graphs.
And folks, I tell you, he did an amazing work. So I encourage you to go and get his book.
Okay, I've got circled there Ibn Kathir. That's circled Ibn Kathir. Let's go ahead and circle also Ibn Mujahid. I want to look at those two circles because what's in between those two circles are a bunch of names. See all those names and see all the threads? Those are the threads we're talking about. So what are the most extensive threads? Look at the two ones in red, and I'll just
Ibn
circle them.
Kathir is the reader, not Ibn Kathir, the commentator.
No, this is another one.
Yes.
Be careful. We're not talking about the Ibn Kathir who is from the Tafsir.
Exactly.
This is Ibn Kathir who is the reader from 738. There is Al-Bazi and there is Kunbul that I've circled in red.
Correct.
Those are the two that Ibn Mujahid chose. Just those two. Out of how many? Out of 59 different rawis, rawis. That means 59 different writers of the Quran. That means all of which would have been written down at that time. Between the 8th and 10th century, 59 different transmitters wrote 59 different derivations of the Quran, all in the family of Ibn Kathir, and only 2 were chosen out of these 59. He threw the other 57 away. Now, did you know this before today?
Before reading his book and going through this, of course not. There's a lot of these things that you grow up in a Muslim country and you're not taught any of this, by the way. You're told, okay, yeah, sure, there is Warsh, there is Hafs, but this is what the Prophet basically read.
Okay, that's Ibn Kathir. That's just one of the 10. Let's go now to Nafi, the one we've just been talking about from from Medina. There you have Nafi, and he dies in 785, and let's circle his name up there, and there's Ibn Mujahid at the bottom. So how many, who is it the one that he chooses? Well, he chooses Qalun, who is from Medina, and Ibn Mujahid chooses Warsh, who is from Egypt. But he should have chosen Ismail or Musayyabi, who are over to the left. What's fascinating, how many did he have to choose from? Well, he had 63 different Qira'at Rawis.
I mean, you have Yaqub ibn Ja'far, he's connected to Nafi', connected to Medina. I mean, at least he has more sources than Warsh himself.
But look at the 63. I'm like, we really need to focus on exactly how many we're talking about. So let's go to another one. Here is Abu Amr from Basra. 770 when he dies. Let's go ahead and circle him. Ibn Mujahid down here at the bottom again. Let's see how many he has. Well, before we look at that, he chose Al-Duri, which is there circled in red, and also Al-Susi. Those are the 2 he chooses, and because, again, they have many more strands. They're more popular. This has nothing to do with ability. This has nothing to do with textual credibility. It has everything to do with political situation as to who is the ones that has the most after him. How many does he have that he could have chosen? 65. 65 different Qur'ans that he could have chosen. He threw out 63 and only chose these 2. This is starting to add up, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Let's go one more. I just want to give you one more, and this is Asim from Kufa. He dies in 745. There's Asim's name circled and Ibn Mujahid down at the bottom. Take a look at all those names. Every one of those names. They're so small, I can't read them. Because to get them all in one graph, there's so many of them. Who are the ones that he chooses? Well, he chooses Shuba, and he chooses Hafs. Those are the 2 that are circled in red. So how many could he have chosen from? 91. 91 different Qira'at Rawis, different Qur'ans. Each one of them would have been a different Qur'an. He chose only Shuba and Hafs. Now, let's go and take a look at our conclusions here. First of all, the Qira'ats between Ibn Kathir and Ibn Mujahid are 59. The Qira'ats between Nafi and Ibn Mujahid are 63. The Qira'ats between Abu Amr and Ibn Mujahid are 65. The Qira'ats between Asim and Ibn Mujahid are 91. That's a total of 278 different Qira'ats. Basically, you're talking about 278 different Qur'ans just from those 4. But remember, we have 10 of them. These are just 4 out of 10. So if you take the average of the 278 is 70, and you multiply that times 10, you're talking about almost 700 different written Qira'at Qur'ans that we could have had today. Except for 670 of them were thrown out and only retained the 30 that we have today. Now, I never heard this until this year. I wasn't even aware of this. I've heard of it. Shady Nasser, I hadn't read it. But it was Colin who got me onto this. Said, Jay, you need to read this stuff. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. This is nothing that I've come across, and I've never heard Muslims talk about this. Why don't Muslims talk about this? Why aren't Muslims making this public? Why aren't Muslims telling people like Muhammad Hijab, you've got a real problem here. If you think 30 is bad, what about 700? So when he put his hand out there to Yasir Qadhi and said, which one are you going to put there? There could be a possibility of 700 that he could put there. And when Yasir Qadhi says, well, they're all of them. All 700? Just by looking at 23 of the 700, we've come up with 93,000 differences. Can you imagine the number of differences we could come up with if we had access to all the 700? Goodness sakes, I'm so glad I don't have to defend this. No wonder we're talking about holes in narratives. This is a huge hole, a hole that's 700 times multiplied. And that's why, can you then understand why Yasir Qadhi says, we do not talk about this in public. Take my class And I would like to know if even Yasser Qadi is aware of this. Is he aware of these 700? Did he know?
I'll be surprised if Yasser Qadi doesn't know about the work of Shady Nasser, but who knows? Maybe he is.
Thank God we don't have this problem with the Bible. Thank God we don't make these claims. Thank God we don't say that there has only been one Bible that was sent down exactly as we have today to Jesus Christ, and he wrote it down. No, or he had it written down. No, we don't make these type of claims. But see, the Muslims do. And that's when you hear Yasser Qadi get up, say there has not been one word, not one letter, that there has only been one Quran. We know it's preserved. When he goes into his mantra, he's sitting there and he's just saying, I do not want to be confused with the facts. But we're looking at him and he's an emperor with no clothes. This is the emperor with no clothes. Folks, we're exposing them. They don't have anything. They're not wearing a thing. They are actually exposing themselves because they're not looking at the historical record.
That is correct. And folks, this type of info, Jay is not kidding. This is groundbreaking for the vast majority of people in the Muslim world, but even for everybody in the world. I assure you that not a whole lot of people spend time or invest energy to know about these things. And here we are, putting it to you in a very simplified fashion, in a way that makes perfect sense. So use it with your Muslim friends. And if you're a Muslim watching this, challenge your leaders who keep telling you you have the Quran that was revealed to the Prophet of Islam. Which Quran? Which Quran? The one Quran, 10 Qurans, 70 Qurans, 30 Qurans, 700 Qurans? Which Quran? Please tell me which one out of all of these came from heaven. That's the main question. Jay, what are we going to cover next time?
We're going to start.
No, is that different? Are these different words? Do these have different meanings?
Excuse me, sir. Watch your side, please.
Why are the Muslims always violent like this? Come on, Muslims, calm down. Calm down. Calm down. If you're going to be violent, just go. We'll call the police. We'll ask you to go.
You've all just been watching what's been happening. We showed these 26 Qurans. You'll see the video. We were about ready to leave the corner when all these young Muslims came and surrounded us. They wanted these Qurans. They wanted to take them. They were trying, as you saw, trying to take them out of our bags. They were very upset because they want to know why we had these Qurans. We told them because we've been showing that they're all different. And they could not believe that, and they didn't want this evidence to leave the corner.
This is the public way.
Guys, these are not your Quran.
I'm the public.
No way.
You don't touch it because this is property.
He's not allowed to the Quran Kareem and the liar on it.
They want to steal from
Just come to me now.
Some Muslims are quite he's driving a holy way, yeah? A liar on it.
Shut down and stop it. I'm not going to give you these. Who cares? Who are you? Who are you? Why are you so...
I want to know why do you have so many Qur'ans in the bag?
Because every one of them is different. Every one of them is different.
Shut up, white child.
We have shown today 26 different Qur'ans, and you're upset. And you want to take these Qur'ans from us.
I want to take it. Have I said that? Have you seen me?
Goodbye.
Have you
We've
seen me go
finished
back?
this. Hey! Don't touch it. Here we go. This is so typical. You saw how we had to walk away. You saw how we had to protect the bag. You saw how they tried to even grab it out of the bag. Can you see why this destroys everything Islam stands for? Can you see why Muslims are so insecure? I thank God we don't have this problem with the Bible. It's going to be something that will continue. But then you'll understand for Muslims who have always been told their whole lives that the Quran is sacrosanct, it's eternal, it's been sent down, it has been unchanged, and every Quran is exactly the same all over the world. We showed that there were 26 different Qurans. They're in those bags. They wanted to get rid of them. They wanted to make sure that we did not continue with this because they don't know how to deal with it because it destroys everything they know. They don't have a relationship with God. All they have is that Quran and the man, the book of the man, the book of the man. That's all they have to go on. I can see why they're angry. I can see why they wanted to get rid of this from us. I can see why they were concerned that we were still going to use this. Because as long as we have this in our possession, we can now show the whole world the problem with this book, this Quran. God bless you.
Every single student of knowledge knows, who studies Ulum al-Quran, that the most difficult topics are ahruf and qira'at. And the concept of ahruf and the reality of ahruf and the relationship of the Uthmanic Mus'haf with the ahruf and the preservation of the ahruf. Is it 1? Is it 3? Is it 7? And the relationship of the qira'at to the ahruf. This is a topic that when you're the beginning student of knowledge, you're like, what is all of this going on here? When you go a little bit more, you learn to simply memorize what your teachers say and regurgitate it out. And you don't fully comprehend. When you do a deep dive is when things get very, very awkward and difficult. And this isn't new. This is from the time of the Sahaba. This is not a joke, brothers and sisters. The issue of ahruf and qira'at caused confusion to somebody whom the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to listen to the Quran directly, listen to Ubay. Ubay is not some even average Sahabi. He is the Qari of the Quran. He is the master. He is who he is. And he goes, فَدَخَلْ فِي نَفْسِي شَكْ. What is all of this stuff? Again, this is you're asking some very honest questions. It's the first time I'm saying these things. Many people are aware who listen to my lectures that I've mentioned the crises that happened to me at Yale. This was the issue. That the issue of ahruf and preservation and qira'at and relationships between them, these are very, very difficult issues. And the most advanced of our scholars, they're not quite fully certain how to solve all of the unanswered questions in there. Here's the point. These issues should only be discussed amongst people who know what the qira'at are and who understand some of these questions that are being raised.
Is what you're saying the shak that came, or not the shak, but the crisis that you had was in relation to this question of the relationship between the ahruf and the qira'at, basically?
No. The crisis I had wasn't that. The crisis I had was, well, yeah, wait, that was what generated. But what was the crisis? The crisis was very simple. Traditional understandings of ahruf and qira'at cannot answer some of these pressing questions that are now being poked by our people outside of, by our academics, by their academics outside of the faith tradition. You see, in a Muslim environment, there's always some respect that we have for the Quran. We should. In a Muslim environment, we'll press a little bit and then we'll say, okay, khalas, sami'na wa ata'na. And that's great, alhamdulillah. When you go to academia, they don't have that red line. And they're gonna just, you know, the famous story of the emperor with no clothes. They're going to just point out, no, that doesn't make any sense. Well, that's not true, and this and that. And they'll bring issues, which I'm not going to mention explicitly, that you know are true because they're in your own books. They're not inventing anything new. They'll bring you riwayat, and they'll bring you athar, and then you add to that very well-known issues of, I don't even want to be explicit. And then you bring on top of that makhtutat, and then. And it's very clear to you and to every single very advanced student and specialist that the standard narrative has holes in it. That's what I'm going to say. The standard narrative does not answer some very pressing questions. These are now well known within the Western Academy, that they're bringing forth issues. Their level of now knowledge is leaps and bounds above what it used to be, 100 years ago. What is happening in the last few years is not me anymore. It's the Western academics. These problems are now becoming mainstream. And by and large, our ulama in the Eastern world are not aware, by and large, of what's going on in the Western side of things. And they're not answering those questions in a manner that it needs to be answered.